United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Open Public Meetings Act statement, please.
Pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Act, adequate notice of this meeting was forwarded to the official township newspapers, posted on the bulletin board and township website on November 3rd, 2022. This meeting is being taped from Radio 29.
Roll call.
Mr. Doyle?
Here.
Mrs. Lane?
Here.
Mr. Keane?
Here.
Mr. Marsh?
Here.
Mayor Bruno?
Here. I get a motion to open the public hearing on ordinance 1023, privately owned salt storage.
I'd like to make a motion to table 01023.
And a second. Second. All in favor?
Which,
Roll call.
we published it for a public hearing, so if there's no comment, we can move to table.
All right.
I'd like to make a motion to open public comment for 01023.
All in favor?
Aye.
I get a motion to close ordinance 1023.
Motion to close.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Now we need to do that matter.
Yeah, you can move to table.
I get a motion to table ordinance 1023.
Make a motion to table 01023.
Second. All.
Mr. Doyle? Yes. Mrs. Lane?
Yes.
Mr. Keane?
Yes.
Mr. Marsh?
Yes.
Mayor Bruno?
Yes. Can I get a motion to open public hearing on ordinance 1123, tree removal replacement?
I'd like to make a motion to open the public hearing to table 01123.
Just open the public. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Good evening. Can you hear me here or no? Yes?
We can hear you now.
Okay, thanks. I know back there, some of them weren't hearing when Barb was on, so I wasn't sure if all the mics are on. Public hearing, tree removal, replacement, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I have just a couple questions on it, only because, like I said, I know it was introduced at the last meeting. So can you give me an idea, was this presented to you by the Environmental Commission, or what was the reason for putting this on?
This is provided by the state.
So the state decided to,
We hear that they are changing it, so we
okay, so,
Pushed down from the DEP as part of stormwater management.
okay, that's what I wanted to find out, if it was, and did it go through our Environmental Commission?
it's from the state.
But that's what I'm saying, but did they get a copy to see this?
No.
And give any recommendations or anything regarding that? Okay,
This New Jersey DEP had sent us the
Right.
actual ordinance, and we just had to input our town demographics into it. It was pretty much cut out of mandatory the way they wanted it worded.
I understand that, but they normally have a public comment that you can, you know what I'm saying, address it, and I didn't know if they,
The DEP had a comment.
An open comment period,
There were
right.
Hundreds of comments received, and it was pushed out at that, shortly thereafter. Whether there's going to be changes to it or not is what's pending now.
Right, because they sent out some.
so you're just following, in other words, we're not, okay. And we didn't make any comments, so nobody from the Township of Franklin sent anything when the DEP had their public
We didn't make
comments.
formal comments.
You didn't make formal comments, okay.
We made a comment.
But not a formal comment, that was from our board.
Correct.
Okay, that's what I needed to know, thank you.
Can I get a motion to close ordinance 1123? Public hearing.
Motion closed.
All in favor?
Aye. I make a motion to table 01123.
Mr. Doyle? Yes. Mrs. Lane?
Yes.
Mr. Keane?
Yes.
Mr. Marsh?
Yes.
Mayor Bruno?
Yes. Can I get a motion to open the public hearing on ordinance 1223? Bond ordinance providing for various 2023 general capital improvements by and in the Township of Franklin and the County of Gloucester, State of New Jersey, appropriating $1.8 million, therefore, and authorizing the issuance of $1,713,800 in bonds and notes to finance part of the cost thereof.
We're open that hearing. Motion to open.
All in favor?
Aye.
Dave Marshall, 67 New Road. Everybody hear me all right back there? Not to pick on the Public Works, we talked before, I appreciate you guys. But I do have a question on that, the Public Works bond ordinance. The amount of money being allotted over a 7.2-year span comes out to $7,750 a month for roughly 3 vehicles. Now, I know one of them's a larger vehicle with a roll-off. I know there's different things, but it just seems a little excessive.
There's a lot more than just 3 vehicles in DPW. There's police cars involved in there.
Well, no, this is just for that line item. I didn't break down anything about the police cars or anything else. That's all separate. This is just for that portion.
Right.
I mean, I could rent a truck a day for that and not have a problem. So I'm just wondering how we came up with that number again. I brought this up the last meeting. It just seems extremely high.
We looked into costs for what we needed for the roll-off containers that are over at the compost facility, what we're taking out, and then Brian inspected out the actual trucks that we use on a daily basis. They have plow attachments and all that that go with them.
Well, I know there's a lot with it. And that's what I'm asking, trying to find out some of the other details. It just, like I said, just seems high. And if we get some more information, it helps figure that out. Thank you.
Bringing a motion to close public hearing on ordinance 1223.
Motion to close?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Bringing a motion to adopt ordinance 1223.
Motion to adopt for 1223?
Mr. Doyle? Mrs. Flame?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Marsh?
Yes.
Mayor Vernon?
Yes. Bringing a motion to open the public hearing on ordinance 1323, supplementing chapter 138 entitled Affordable Housing by adding section 138-11 entitled Affordable Housing Regulations to the Code of the Township of Franklin to address the requirements of the Fair Housing Act, Uniform Housing Affordability Control, and the Township's affordable housing obligations.
Make a motion to open the hearing on 1323.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good evening. Chris Sayers, 184 Malaga Lake Boulevard. As you know, I'm sure you know, affordable housing is largely a state issue, and we kind of negotiate as best we can with the Fair Share Housing Center. And I did a lot of research looking at areas surrounding towns and their settlements. And as much as I wanted to find a loophole where we got the shaft, it's pretty comparable to the other town settlements. So, and I understand that a lot of you up there are not against affordable housing per se, but you certainly want to try and keep the town as rural as possible. And I think that's commendable, and that's a goal that I think a lot of people in this town share. My concern that I have is that a lot of the overlay zoning is in Malaga, where I live, and I was just wondering who decided where to have these overlay zones? For, like, was this negotiated? Was this the town suggested these sites? Or I don't know if you could give me any more information as to where.
I can address it.
Sure.
First off, just to back up a little bit, I know Mr. Sayers, I know you know this very deeply, but other people may not. This suit started in 2015. It's been litigated by numerous attorneys. We even, Judge Becker, we saw the end of his career while he was handling this. He had this for many years, which was very fortunate because he understood the uniqueness of Franklin, both within the county and within the state. There were, as always, the key issue here for us was the durational adjustment and the understanding by the court, specifically Judge Becker, that we don't have water and sewer, and it's not a fallacy. It's an actual true fact. It's not. We were required to search it out. We were required to communicate with all the neighboring towns that did not produce any results. The Fair Share Housing had a very expansive list of properties that they would like to see it within the overlay zone. Quite frankly, a vast majority of properties that touch any type of county, state, road, or any type of close vicinities to some of our neighboring towns that to potentially help spur the development. The list was provided. The demand it's like any type of lawsuit. One side makes a demand, the other side responds. And through various back and forth, eventually the Township Committee did approve the settlement and did approve the properties that were selected. But it was, again, an effort on behalf of the governing body and the township to make that list as reasonable, I don't want to say small, but as condensed and appropriate as possible. Because again, nobody knows Franklin Township better than the elected officials of Franklin Township, things that Fair Share Housing out of their offices have no idea. And it was a struggle. This is the last case in the county. Most of them settled in 18 and 19. But again, it's a unique situation. So there was a back and forth. It was an extensive back and forth that resulted in a reduction from the expansive list that they had first saw.
Thank you very much for that. My only concern is that I certainly, I wouldn't say a majority, but a lot of them are in the Malaga-centric area. And my concern is, like, the one of the bases for affordable housing is to remove concentrated poverty from the state's urban areas and kind of spread it out evenly among the municipalities so that everybody kind of shares that burden. And plus, New Jersey is an expensive state, so affordable housing is a plus. But my concern is that we're concentrating poverty in Malaga. Like, you know, I'm working class, and we're going to concentrate more working class in one section of town at the expense of other sections of the town. So, I mean, that was my concern. Was sewer also a factor, like potential future sewer service area? Was that also a potential factor in choosing these overlay zones?
Well, again, with regard to the sewer, the way court walked us through it was to require us, through our planner and engineer, to reach out to adjoining towns for the potential of sewer expansion or obtaining it. And that was a very long process because, quite frankly, the surrounding towns weren't very responsive.
Yeah.
But at the end, particularly the Gloucester County towns were unable to do so because we're prohibited from being linked in to the Gloucester County Utility Authority as a financing issue. So that eventually their answer was a hard no.
Yeah.
So that's again, the durational adjustment is the key to this agreement because it acknowledges our limitations and doesn't require us to expend municipal funds to install infrastructure, sewer or water.
Okay.
Because, quite frankly, the back and forth showed that it's not water and sewer availability apparently have been used in other towns historically, or the limitation of it to thwart affordable housing. It was used as a weapon, so to speak. It's not being used that way here. There isn't it. Yeah, it's just who we are as a township. And once the court recognized that, that's again, that was our biggest accomplishment to have that accepted by the court, and that there is no funding requirement for that, so that we can get the judgment of protection from now till the end of the cycle, which unfortunately is only 2025 at this point.
Yeah, we get 2 years. 2 years from builder's remedy lawsuits of immunity, and then
we've had
we're
8
back.
years, but we've had 8
one.
years at 6 months at a time.
Yeah.
And there are some times where the judge would say, "Why should I extend it?" And I said, "Judge, because we're doing everything you asked, and I can't spur other people to do things outside of our town." So we've been protected since the case was filed, and admittedly, the protections across the state, the round runs out July 1st of 2025.
Okay. Thank you.
My name is Marie Sheard, and I live in Newfield. And my concern is what type of housing is going to be built in these areas, and what voice do residents have? Will it be consistent with the type of housing that's there now? Because it seems like I've read something that it could be multi-family developments. So I want to know, are you putting in apartments?
There is no plan for housing right now.
There is no plan. But will residents have an opportunity to voice?
Mayor, I can answer that. That as a result of this, these actions and the settlement, any project would still be subject to the standard land use review, whether it was at our zoning board or our planning board. It would still require that approval. And again, the first thing would have to occur is somebody with an ownership interest or potential interest in a property would have to solve, if they're talking about or proposing what you're talking about, which would be high density.
That's right.
They'd have to solve the sewer problem on site, because the court has acknowledged there's no realistic possibility of solving the water and sewer problem or the sewer problem with public sewer. So the density of any application will be subject to all local, county, and state regulations as to that sewer. And that they're significant, and if it's a Pinelands property is even another layer. But again, as the mayor stated, there's no pending application. There's nobody that has filed an application and indicated any solution to that problem or proposed any high density housing at this point.
Thank you.
There's been a lot of talk through Facebook and different areas, and the last time we got up and spoke about this earlier this year, there was actually even another board member that got up and spoke against us for being prejudiced or even almost racist towards low-income housing. Before that gets said, just so everybody knows, I have been and have lived low income for a little over 2.5 years. I had a sleeping bag and a weight bench, and there's days I didn't eat. I understand that side. I've lived in an income-based apartment complex that didn't have a Mr. Softy truck. We had a Mr. Drug truck. It played the music and went around, and just all it had was drugs, and the police let it happen because they were afraid to come in. It was bad. It still stands today, and they're still afraid to go in. This is what can happen in the event of high-density housing and improper mitigation from people that manage that facility or those properties and our elected officials. That's my biggest concern, is to making sure this gets managed correctly. I know the state's got their dictations, that has to happen, things along those lines have to occur. But unfortunately, if it's not managed correctly, crime does go up, property values do go down in the surrounding areas. So all that has to be taken into effect and thought when this is done. When you look at crime, according to World Bank and the United Nations Crime and Justice Department, anytime you separate economic areas out, as the economic bracket goes down, crime goes up substantially. It starts at a 2 or 3% in the same area that it's in, and it goes up to 18 to 25% in the surrounding areas. Most of that being middle class, and that's where most of the crime occurs again if this is not managed correctly. According to the most recent FBI study, which was unfortunately back in 2018, the nationwide average per crime per 1,000 residents was 13.72. Ours at that point in time was 28.69. That's Franklin Township statistic. I'm hoping it's gone down now, but I've got nothing to base it on, so I've got to go by what we have from back then. We already had an issue, and I'm not taking away from the police. They work hard, and they've got a tough job. I know we've got different members that are here, and I know we've got some that are up there, and I appreciate everything that you've done. But it's just the fact that, are you going to be able to handle this if it doesn't get managed right? You know, are we going to be able to do it? And again, it has to happen from the first stages on, where we have to manage it correctly. There's no other way about it. You mentioned about water and sewer, and there's something I brought up at the planning board meeting, and I want to read it because this is right out of the actual Fair Share Housing Plan. On page 32, it says, consistent with the settlement agreement with the Fair Share Housing Center, the township will commit to providing assistance as necessary to any entity, either public or professional, that would seek to develop water and sewer infrastructure necessary to serve the development that would include affordable housing. This assistance shall come in the form of support for any applications made to the Department of Environmental Protection or other agencies that may have jurisdiction over the provision of water and sewer services, and any other reasonable steps necessary to facilitate the provision of such utilities to appropriate areas of the township to service any affordable housing development. I know what the planning board told me what that meant. I'm asking, what does it mean? How is it going to affect us on the tax side? How's it going to affect the infrastructure? I mean, these are all things that we need answers on. So
It does not require us to fund the installation. We would not be able to fail to provide information or cooperation in that process as, quote, a tool to prevent it. But there's absolutely no requirement due to our lack of infrastructure to extend or create any infrastructure to meet those sewer needs.
So it's only to help facilitate in the paperwork side, pretty much.
Correct. We can't take a defensive posture in that as a tool to prevent an otherwise approved, or again, none of the engineers involved from any of the participants are able to solve this problem at this point as a technological / economic proposition.
Right. So in the event a builder comes in and builds this in one of these areas, and say, for example, Malaga, right near where I live, what's going to happen to the surrounding areas as tie-ins? Is it a 2-year, 10-year? What's the grace period, and what could be the future cost?
I can't even answer that because there's let me say that to not take action leaves us subject to the builder's remedy lawsuit.
Right, I understand it has to happen.
That puts us in that difficult position that you're describing, but I don't know what, I can't theorize a way that it would be solved that would allow it or present it as a possible tie-in. The only remaining solutions after all of the work that the court forced us to do was that it would have to be, quote, cured on site, dealt with on site, whether it's a package plant or, I mean, for high density housing, you're not building a septic field.
No.
But so, and again, the sewer can't leave Franklin Township and end up in an adjoining Gloucester County municipality that then forwards it to Gloucester County Utilities Authority, because the Gloucester County Utilities Authority cannot take us. They cannot add towns that weren't part of the formation because of a funding / bonding issue. We missed our chance.
Right.
What your opinion of is missing that chance is that, but we missed our chance for better or worse. We can't tie into Clayton because the sewage from Clayton goes to the GC Way.
Right. And I know I'm out of time. I got one other quick question. The one property that goes between Grubb and right across from the dollar store near my house. Dead in the middle, there was a property that's been for sale. All those properties have been for sale for years. The one in the middle was under contract. Once the planning board meeting hit, that under contract sign went down. So does that mean it's, at this point in time, it's not under contract? Do you know, or is there a builder looking into that property?
I know there are people that inquired about it, but the last I heard about it was someone was inquiring about it for cannabis and like a storage facility. And my reply to them was, based on what I've read, that you can have those two factors together, but they have to bring everything before the board, and that's the last I heard from them.
All right, so there's nothing else that you know of on that property? All right, thank you.
Harry Kennedy, 1578 Fry's Mill Road. There's a word that probably some of you are familiar with, I'm sure most of you. It's called symbiotic or symbiosis, and that is one thing makes another thing happen. Some of you were at that economic development, that famous one back last year, when they discussed bringing sewage and water in to deal with the redevelopment zone. And again, as the Learned Counsel pointed out, it's unlikely at the present time that anybody is going to bring a sewer line from Clayton because of the tie-in with the Gloucester County Utilities Authority. However, the Vineland side of it, with the Landed Sewage Authority, who knows what's possible? Who knows what's possible with the water that's been set aside from the deal that was made with Buna. Symbiotic relationships are if you can use an excuse to bring in water and sewer for low-cost housing, you can also use that water and sewer for, guess what? a redevelopment zone or a construction area. So somebody might be tempted to do it in terms of what it would provide. Now, you can think that all of that in Malaga is an accident and just happened to be there, or you can be a person that believes in symbiotic relationships and believe that the possibility exists that if you are going to have a packet plant, which has been talked about by many mayors dating back to some that are still alive way back into the past, or if you're going to bring in the Land and Sewage Authority, then you have the capability of also doing a redevelopment zone and doing some commercial ratables in that area. Now, as to who owns that property in the overlay zone or who owns the property nearby, or maybe we'll go and find it in a special tax sale and it'll magically appear to not be somebody else's. But all that symbiotic relationship exists. Everything that was said by the council is probably true. It's very unlikely that it's going to happen in the area that was designated as low-cost housing on the property that used to be our family farm, because Clayton is never going to run a sewage line there. And even if you have approved it, which you did for multi-density, high-density housing, you're not going to get a sewage plant on that size of property. But the property in Malaga is special, and Mr. Marshall is right, and the people that live in Malaga are right to be suspicious. They have been told in the past that certain areas are not the best for redevelopment zones or for housing, and yet they magically appear for some reason or another, or property sales magically appear, or cousins or brothers magically appear as buyers of the property at township sales. Again, I honestly believe that the majority of people on this township committee, and the majority, or at least 3 of you, are absolutely going to do what's right. I just hope that majority extends into next year and the following year and the year after that to do what's right. Because when there's a chance to make that amount of money, when we're talking about 7 to 10 million properties that were bought for what, $50,000 or $60,000 a few years ago, and suddenly the possibility of water and sewer, and suddenly the great lollipop of saying it's going to be low-cost housing, well, that water and sewer can be tied in many different directions. And again, that overlay map was negotiated. Was it negotiated in good faith? I didn't make the negotiations. I don't know. I know it affects people that live in Malaga and in the special areas of Malaga. Again, you have to be very much aware of symbiotic relationships, symbiosis, developers, and the cleverness of developers and their ability to hitchhike on low-cost housing to get even more wonderful returns on swampland for redevelopment. Let's be very careful. And thank God we still do have at least 3 people up here who I'm sure will protect the welfare of Franklin Township. Thank you.
I think I could put a lot of people's minds at ease here. I recently moved here from Gloucester Township, Camden County. If any of you are familiar with it, Gary Evans. I live at 67 Malaga Terrace. Okay, my friends and I bought a house there. Ironically, to get away from the very problems that you're talking about. Now it's like anything else, it's not cut and dry. First of all, we got to realize something. Poor or not, these are still people. They're fellow Americans just like us. What we found out, we had this whole thing 20 years ago in Gloucester Township. The problem, ironically, was the teenagers. The little kids, you give them a mud hole, they'll be happy. The teenagers are too young to go to bars, but they're too old to play Barbies in the thing. They're the ones who were causing a problem for the police department. Any police officers here that have served in other departments could probably back me up with this. I was in the fire department. High-density housing is a whole nother game. You have a wonderful fire department in Malaga. It's renowned for their rescue abilities and their dive team. But the whole multi-family dwelling thing is like a whole nother book. I know because I was an instructor in Camden County, an assistant instructor, and it's like a whole nother game. The sewer problem, may not be as insurmountable as we think, only because the massive advances in technology might make possible a state-of-the-art sewer system that's going to be about the size of a convenience store. They've been able to miniaturize stuff so much. They also have another thing that might make people not upset about having a sewer there. You can use hydrogen peroxide to treat it rather than chlorine. It costs more, but it totally eliminates the smell. There is a sewer plant in Baltimore City right in the middle of a residential neighborhood, and you can literally sit there and eat your lunch. You don't smell anything because of the hydrogen peroxide. So it seems to me we'll have to get the maximum amount out of these developers. One of the things maybe we could ask them for is, can you build a youth center for these people? And since I believe in putting my money where my mouth is, if there's a youth center, I volunteer to run it because I'm retired. I worked with at-risk youth. The key to them is keeping them busy. We could take what's a potential problem and turn it into a sterling asset for this township. Get these kids involved in their community. We could have them out there painting senior citizens' houses and everything. These kids need direction. Some of them are bad. I mean, some of them need to be incarcerated, but the majority of them are just neglected. I mean, I've met young kids that, you know, luckily we probably all had good parents. My father taught me how to use a screwdriver and a hammer. He also hit me upside the head if I didn't put him back on the toolbox. But you can't do that anymore. I mean, we can't have it us versus them thing. I've talked to some people, you would swear it was the movie Red Dawn and a Cuban parachute division is going to land in there. Well, it's not that. It's other Americans like us. I'm probably going to incur the wrath of some people. The opposition to the mega distribution centers is short-sighted. If you allow them to be built here, you're creating jobs, tax rateables that don't put a bunch of kids in school, and yes, there will be more traffic. Nothing's all lollipops and rainbows. That's not the way the world works. But how many cars you think are going to be generated in a development where even poor people have 2 or 3 cars? You're going to have to maybe improve public transportation. We might even get on the bandwagon and say, hey, you're going to run that light well to Glassboro? Maybe you better run it all the way to Millville and have a stop here so these people can get to where the jobs are. The police are going to have to get more involved in the community. They are now. I've had some interaction with police officers here. They've been very professional, very, very helpful. But it's this could turn into a very bad thing. If it's done wrong, this could become, pick the worst ghetto in the state. We don't want that to happen. None of us want that to happen, including the poor people that are going to have to live in there. I did delivery work all my life. There's decent people in all those places. Some of them are just stuck there because they don't have the economic ability to get out of it. Nobody wants to be in a war zone. Nobody wants their children seeing prostitutes and drug dealing right outside their house. And we're all going to have to work together on that and make these poor people realize that, look, we don't want this stuff in our community. We're not saying you all are that way, but any people that come in here, we're going to do what we have to do to get rid of them, whether it's incarcerate them or anything. That said, you can't have a vigilante mob burning places to the ground and everything. We had that problem in Gloucester Township where they were trying to keep the houses out. There's a gang of people going around burning these buildings to the ground as they were building. And we ended up having a firefighter seriously injured and everything else. There is a lot of potential. People are scared here because it's an unknown. What happened in Gloucester Township was not pretty, unfortunately, and I'm not insinuating anything here. Bribes were taken, hands were greased, and corners were cut. And we don't want that to happen. You look like a pretty intelligent group of people here. I don't think you're going to let it happen. But like the last gentleman says, the temptation is there when there's that much money. That's why you can't wipe out drugs, because you put one drug dealer away and somebody else jumps in to get into that multi-billion-dollar industry. It's tough. If you keep on these kids, if you give them something positive to do, most of them don't have any adult structure in there. The adults in their family are gone all day long working. We have a lot of grandfathers, retired people like myself. I have plenty of time on my hands. I work well with young people. And I'll bet you there's a lot more people in this township would say, hey, you know, I'll go to the youth center. I'll teach these kids how to wire their house or weld like I used to do.
Thank you for your comments.
Yeah. So I know everybody's scared, but I think if we handle this right, it'll actually improve things overall in the township, not make it worse.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Higher taxes.
How you doing? My name's Sean Matheson. I live on 800 Grand Avenue. I live behind Long Little Ease Run. I have 18 acres of Little Ease Run that's adjacent to the Garoppolo properties that are on either side of the high tension line where they want to do the housing projects possibly in the future. All the water that comes down here is for Little Ease Run. And if they do housing projects back there, I live there. I'm telling you, I know it's going to be polluted eventually. It's a very sensitive area. There's a lot of swamps, but there's a stream and it runs, it feeds Franklinville Lake, and it comes down here, it flows all through here. So it's something to consider. You're not going to be able to get 14 properties per acre in Freeze Mill Run area. It's just ridiculous. I mean, realistically, it's just, the town charter is basically based on like a Medford plat. It was supposed to be like Medford at once at some point. If you do this, we're going to be like Cherry Hill or Williamstown. We're going to be, we're going to be a crap hole eventually, So just don't do it. That's all I ask. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Mark DeLoyson. I live on 1002 Fries Mill Road. Been there for 10 years. I'm the one on where all the cones are up, where they raised my road up like almost 40 inches. The mayor and Matt was over there a couple weeks ago. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate that. I got married like almost 40 years ago, and my wife's from Philly, so we lived there like 5 years, and it was going down big time. So, and I had young kids, so we decided to move to New Jersey. That's originally where I'm from. So we moved to Runnymede. So we lived there for 20 years, and it started to go down big time. The neighborhood was getting bad. So we said, all right, well, let me move down, because I'm originally from Hamilton. Let's move down here to Franklinville. I had guys that I worked with. I was in the Carpenters Local, and they said, yeah, move down here. You have no problems. Ever since I've been here, they were talking about putting a tar plant across the street from me. I got the people across the street. They're supposed to move. They used to be Eastern Lift. They got tractor and trailers in the middle of the night, pulling out, running off my side of the road, crushing the side of the road, and coming across. And I was like, I came here to get peace and quiet, no problem. So I definitely oppose this, and I just hope everything works out for the Malaga and on my street too. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Morris Reichman, 1391 Northwest Boulevard. Property's been in my family since the 1940s when my grandparents emigrated. We were here for the beginning of the poultry farming, and the community always had a symbiotic relationship, not only with each other, but also with nature. And what I'm worried about and what I think about is, why was my property highlighted in your overlay map? Block 5504, Lot 2. I remember Malaga, I remember Newfield, I remember Franklin Township as a quiet community. Right now, the boulevard is becoming like a drag strip. Not too long ago, we had a fatality. The first fatality I know of since the 1950s on the boulevard and Lake Road. We don't have the infrastructure to handle much more housing. In your map, it doesn't show the 5 adjacent homes that were just put on Harris Avenue. And the road wasn't improved. It's barely big enough for a car and a half. The boulevard is 2 cars wide. But yet, the other night, there was a tractor trailer came down and was passing cars right near my house. We don't have the infrastructure available for increased roads, and that's what affordable housing may bring. It may not. If it's done well, if it's planned well, it could be done extremely tolerant of both nature and humans. But I don't know that I see that in your overlay map or in the decisions that are coming out. It's more than just sewage, it's more than just water. It's what happens to everything else in the community. We don't have that infrastructure. And that's what I have.
Hi, my name's Sean Donahue. I live at 310 Harris Ave, ironically, in front of Morris right here, who I met today through all this, which was probably the only good thing that's come of this so far. My property's within 200 feet of the affordable housing overlay zone. My wife and I moved here about over a year and a half ago, so we're part of that younger, new generation trying to get onto land, see things we haven't seen in our suburban areas that we grew up in. When we got in our driveway, we fell in love. The rural area, walking out your front door, you see cardinals bouncing around, blue jays, all types of finch birds. That's something to think about. Taking some of these overlay zones, you're destroying these animals, the wildlife. It's to me is a disgrace. Just to give you some of my credentials, I'm a union plumber in Philadelphia. I hear a lot of people saying that it's impossible for these systems to come in place, but you guys are one developer, one maverick short of coming in, and he'll solve the problem. And then it's at your doorstep. And when you open that door, I just want to let you know, there's going to be Wawa's at every corner, Dunkin' Donuts at every other corner, Walgreens at every other corner, Walmart's, everything. It's going to get overdeveloped, and it might not be 5 years, it could be 10 to 20. But I'm telling you right now, for a younger generation like me, you're driving us out. Because this younger generation is looking for land, they want to see wildlife, they want room, they want to wave to their neighbor, they don't want their neighbor in their business. That's why I moved out here. And I feel like this is being taken from me. And I've only been here a year. So I'm asking you to table this ordinance tonight. I'm asking you to schedule a meeting with the residents that are currently in and bordering the overlay zone. This will give you the opportunity to be more transparent with us and answer our questions. And my one question is how come the overlay zone that Mr. Morris is part of, his property is physically part of, how come they're so clustered together? From my experience, the overlay zones are usually like 1 5-acre zone. This is 4 5-acre zones or properties in a row.
Again, that's a response to a larger demand and central on roadway access or whatnot, Mayor. Again, there were many additional properties originally on the ask list or their demands from the other side. So the ability to have some center of gravity, I guess, is the point, was their point. But that's my interpretation of what their thinking is.
Okay. And that's it for me. It's just the caution because ironically, right now I do PHA housing in Northeast Philly. I build it. I know what it takes. I know what it brings in. Maybe not in a rural setting like this, but in a rural setting, there's nowhere to go. There's you got to walk. I witnessed it on Northwest Boulevard when I take my daughter to the end of the street. My wife had to call the cops today for a tweaker at the end of the street passed out on his bike because she couldn't get off our street. She had to call the cops to get out of our street. If you put 4 overlay zones and 4 low income, part of the low income housing, what was it, 20%? This is what it's going to bring. And that's all I have to say.
Hi, my name is Cynthia Nolan. I live at 20 Grub Road. I will be within 200 feet of one of the larger overlay zones. Presently, Grub Road is a cross-through between 43 and 40, or Delsey and Route 40. And it's already a single-lane road on one end. I live on the end that is 2 lanes. I've already asked for the road to be repaired, but it never has been. I've only been here 2 years. But for that large of a development to be put across the street from me, not only are we going to be losing all of the woodlands that are over there, it's going to create a nightmare on Grub Road. It's going to create a nightmare on West Boulevard and on Delsey. Because from what I looked at, there are going to be quite a few multi-family homes and apartment, single houses and condominiums in that large area. All the woods are gone. I moved here 2 years ago. This is now my retirement home. I looked at 25 homes in Gloucester County and chose the one on Grub because of the area, the beautiful trees, the farms, the woods behind me. If you people let this pass, I can't live there, which means I have to move again. I'm 67. I moved after a 40-year marriage when my husband divorced me. I did it on my own. And you people, I understand low-income housing, affordable housing for people. But you have to consider the people that live on that road, the houses that back onto those properties. It's going to bring our housing values down. It's going to bring our real estate taxes up, even though you say that it won't. It's going to make so many changes in our lives that you people can't imagine, because you don't live on those roads, do you? Does anybody live on Grub that's on this panel? You come see my road. You see where I live. It's beautiful. I put up with some traffic, tractor trailers, yes, speeders going down the road. But if you put that development in there, you're going to have to widen the road. Where's it going to go? You're just going to take the trees away, maybe a little bit of infringement on my property to get a wider road. I wouldn't be happy about that. I also want to know how the
Is that going to come into play?
No, there's no, again, we're seeking the protections to not have any financial involvement in creating these units. There's no compulsion for you to sell your land or to change its use or to do anything other than what your existing zoning remains in place. The
Okay.
overlay sits over top of it. It doesn't infringe your rights to continue to use it as you have.
I sure hope not, because, I mean, you've got all the blue belongs to our family. All of it. It's a shame.
My name's Dan Bliss. I'm on 33 Sandpiper, and my daughter lives at 465 Blackwood Avenue, and that's part of the overlay zone. Hers is. A little bit about myself. I came here 23 years ago because of it being rural, and it just seemed like it was a nice place to live. I grew up in a development my whole life, and I came here for that. And I hear people talking about the septic systems and things like that. I haven't heard anybody talk about the water. I'm not an engineer. I'm not. I don't claim to know, but I understand with water tables and stuff. My next door neighbor 3 years ago, her well went dry and had to drill deeper. So my concerns are something like this with multiple families or multiple homes. Where are they going to pull that water from, and how could it directly affect us? The other thing is, anytime you increase population, you have to increase police enforcement, which absolutely would increase our taxes. So I just think that there has to be more transparency with some of this stuff, because I don't see where this is going to make Franklin Township better. If there was something that could show us that it's going to make our town better, and I think maybe people would be receptive to listening, but all we're...
This is a state mandate. We didn't come up with this. This is a state mandate. The state sued us to force us to go. When I say us, you, everybody else. So I agree with everything you're saying, but it's a state mandate. Judge decided.
So that's every county in New Jersey?
Since 1975, it's a court, it's a New Jersey Supreme Court decision creation of what they determined is a constitutional right under the Constitution of the state of New Jersey. It's often referred to as the Mount Laurel Doctrine. The original town where all this began was Mount Laurel up in Burlington. And we're in the third round. Every 10 year, a round is 10 years. We're 8 years into the third round. And again, without this litigation, we're completely unprotected from attempts to place it and do it anywhere. But it is a compulsion. It's a state mandated process. It's a state mandated obligation that obviously has been very contentious since 1975, but it has been a continuing obligation of every municipality in the state since that court ruling.
I guess what I don't understand is, if I'm hearing that we can, if this gets approved, it's not going to get approved for septic, because it's not feasible, it's not going to happen. So to me, that's just spinning wheels. What's the purpose? I don't understand it.
The purpose is a builder can come in before unprotected, so they need to build 10,000 market rate houses, like the development you grew up with, in order to pay for a small amount of low-income houses. And then you are Williamstown or Washington Township, well, not Washington Township, but Williamstown or Williamstown. So everybody up here agrees with you. The problem is we're working.
Yeah, the builder's remedy suit ordinarily, as Mr. Doyle has said, results in a grant by the court to build, say, 1,000 houses with 20% of them required to be affordable. So the builder finances that project with the 80% of the units that are market rate and provides the 20 inclusionary units. Because we have no protection, the court mandates that to happen, and That's the end result, is the builders use that density to fund the project that otherwise would and make it a dense
Right.
thing, so it's more profitable, quite frankly.
Yeah. Well, another gentleman had said, and I agree with him 100%, that another builder, an outlaw, will come in and he'll make it happen if this happens. History shows that. I mean, that's just how it is.
But I mean, he could do that. He could have done that yesterday also, without any of our,
They've been
without
doing that for the past 8 years.
without any.
Without this being
Well, we've had protection for the last during the litigation, but without the litigation, someone can do that immediately. Like if the town takes these steps, we'll be without what's known as the judgment of repose, the protection, and it's fair game. We've received 16 six-month extensions. We're at the decision point now. It's unlikely there'd be a 17th extension. So that's the balancing act. That's the balancing act in front of the governing body.
But how does the overlay zone, how does it affect property values? Like if we were going to sell?
If you were going to sell a property
That's in this zone.
well, I'm not an expert in that calculation, but if you're asking you now have more rights to do more things with that property. Because you have the underlying zoning, which remains in place, and you have the overlay zoning, which gives you an alternative use for the site. Ordinarily, the more you can do with your property, but I can't speculate. I'm not going to.
I'm just like I'm a common sense thinker, and for me, I'm looking at this. If I'm trying to sell my house and somebody thinks there could be an apartment complex going in behind it, they're not buying my house. That's my opinion. That's how I feel.
I understand. I'm not going to dispute that.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
Good evening, Nancy Kennedy, 711 St. George Street. So what I hear Mr. Lyons saying is that we are required to not obstruct low-cost housing, and I don't disagree with that. What I'm also hearing is that the Township Committee was called upon at some point to make a decision about what properties should be considered for that purpose. And what I'm hearing the room say is we have a lot of concerns about the properties that were chosen. And my question for all of you is, were there specific Township Committee members designated as COA committee members, for lack of a better word? I know we have members. Who were they?
Well, this went back 2 years ago.
Yeah, there was no subcommittee. It was a committee.
Subcommittee, we had co.
Who do you remember who they were?
Dave and myself.
Dave Deegan and you. Okay. And since that time, there hasn't been a subcommittee.
There's a committee, but we haven't really talked about it.
Okay, so if you haven't really talked about it, and everybody here has a lot of concern about the properties that were chosen, and there was a brilliant request made by a gentleman in my row that there be a specific time set aside so the questions can be answered about why those particular properties, then is there any reason why, heck, if we're already this far into it, that we couldn't just table it for tonight and take a look at maybe are there better properties that people feel more comfortable with? Because at the end of the day, you're being guided by professionals who know the law. None of you are attorneys, none of you are specialists in this area. So you're looking to your experts, and your experts, I'm sure, are very qualified. And I know that you've had very qualified experts in the past. But at the end of the day, the 5 of you represent all of us. What you do is supposed to reflect what is best for all of us. So please, please listen to what these people are saying and give them the opportunity to express their concerns to you in a longer period of time than minutes before you take a vote that a lot of people feel will very significantly impact their life in Franklin Township. take a stand and put them first. Thank you.
What is the timeline on this litigation and to when to get it done by?
Well,
8 years ago.
yeah, thank you, Mr.
understand
Marsh.
that,
I
but
mean,
with this information that's in front of us and asking us to pass it so we can protect the town in its ordained roleness, what is the timeline that we have to have this decision then handed back to the judge in the state of New Jersey?
well, it would have been before now. Because we've been very unique and it's been protracted because of our unique characteristics. We would need to seek additional protection. That's all I can say. Like, they want it done now. We had
Is
some.
now like August, is now?
Yeah, now is August, but again, because we are on an extension of our protections. So, we did send out a lot of letters, several hundred letters for tonight's meeting. Judge Becker has since retired, our new judge. I don't want to guess as to
And the
how much time we'd be given if we're given more time.
The properties that we have as an overlay that have then been reduced to decline the amount of properties that are on the overlay. How did we get to those properties? Was it state recommended?
Well, the governing body played a role in that, the entire governing body back in 2022.
So in 2022, the
Yeah.
properties then were decided upon as to what the overlay would be, but it's taken this long to get to the.
It's taken this long to get
accept it from the other side.
and to draft everything and to run it through the planning board process. This has been in constant motion with a lot of obstacles outside our control. Again, since the lawsuit started, 15. Yeah. So, I mean, that's. I just don't have a strong of a history now that Judge Becker has left. So to not take action, the long-term effects could potentially be a little bit less than 2 years of lack of that protection. We're actually 23 months away from the expiration at this point.
So my question, so if we were to postpone this until September and have a public.
Are we closed? Do we want to finish the public hearing? I can answer all, because, I mean, I can answer it now, but.
I just have some questions that the audience had. I was trying to get that clear for everyone that's out there. Does anyone else want to come up and we'll close the public portion? Okay.
I can't raise that. That's all right, don't worry about it. My name is Barbara Butler. I live at 458 Blackwood Avenue, and I came from Woodbury. I've lived in Franklinville now for 4 years. I'm 69 years old, and as I look around the room, I know that most of the people, or many of the people here, are concerned, just like I am, about crime. I am a perfect target for crime. I am handicapped. The elderly are targets, and any other people in this room that may be handicapped are targets. So what are they going to, the foot traffic is going to be ridiculous. The car traffic already is ridiculous. On my property, I'm on the corner of Blackwood Avenue and Fries Mill Road. In 4 years, there's been 5 accidents, 3 of which have ended up in my front yard. Knocked down trees, knocked down bushes. Now, they just did all the road work, which is fine and dandy, but my thought is they need a 3-way stop sign at that intersection to slow this traffic down, especially in the rain. Because I watch them in the rain, they go zipping, and they're not watching where they're going. And good enough that my house is set way back, or they'd hit my house. The last car knocked down trees, bushes, put a big rut in my yard, and it was 2 cars that were totally totaled. And I don't know what they were doing. It was like 10 o'clock at night. And I didn't even know what happened until the policeman knocked on my door to tell me. But something's got to be done about that intersection. We've got to make sure we take care of the potential crime. I'm not going to say that low-income housing is going to create crime, but yeah, it just very well could. And I don't want to be a victim. I also know that I am prepared to defend my property physically and with whatever. If I, you know what I mean. You know what I mean. I mean, I've been told before, if I have to use it, and I will. So that's my concern, is the traffic there and the crime. Thank you.
Anyone else? Motion to close public portion? Oh, never mind.
George Fry, 1158 Washington Avenue. And I don't understand, nobody has discussed, why does it have to be all lump sum, one property? I see so many houses that are empty in Franklin Township. Why can't they spread them out? Put them in empty houses.
We did address that issue to get certain existing units qualified for what's referred to as credits, and we were able to get some qualified and accepted as credits. So we had some success with that, but not as much as you're talking about, I think. But that's there's the possibility to do that, to get additional units qualified in the next round. But there's a whole process that we're forced to do involving income levels, and it's very difficult to obtain the proof, is what it is. Because people don't want to have their privacy invaded, so it can be somewhat difficult. But we did attempt to get as many units as possible of existing housing to qualify. Pardon me? 53.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name's Chris Burton. I'm from 321 Blackwood Avenue. Not a lot of people really addressed the area that's going on Friesmill Road. A few people did, but that's a really large area, and a lot of that is farmland currently. I even know somebody that's here that owns a piece of that property, and I'm just concerned with a lot of the things that people have said involving crime rates raising and things like that in the area. As well as pollution in the area. I know there's a stream that runs right past my house. A little scared that might get polluted. As well as the school district. I'm a little concerned that low-income housing brings in a lot of children. And I loved Delsey Regional. I went there. I've lived here for 22 years, my entire life. This is all I've known. And our schools are already really, really packed. And I'm just scared about what might happen in the future with future generations going through Delsey Regional School District and Franklin Township School District in general. Are we going to have to expand the schools? Do we have the money for that? Do we have the money for more teachers? I want to make sure that future generations are going to have a really, really good education here still. Thank you.
Can I get a motion to close the public portion on ordinance 1323?
Motion to close?
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Matt, you
Yes, Mayor.
have questions?
Can we put this vote off until, say, September, our next meeting, without repercussions from the state? I know you can't.
Yeah,
It's tough to answer.
it's tough to answer. I mean, I would think that our efforts for 8 years show good faith. I don't know we get much more, but I can't predict. We've used up a lot of delay. Again, it was unavoidable because of our town, but just to be clear, to consider it at a next meeting, or we're.
I understand we have to take action, and someone did ask for a public hearing. I haven't seen the overlay in over a year. I wasn't on the committee when it was done, and I haven't seen it since over a year and a half ago. I'd like to see it, I'd like to look at it and have an informed decision before I vote.
It's online right now, correct?
It's fairly soon.
Yes. How about a big poster here so we can take a look at it? Everybody can see when you get to school.
Yeah, I mean, correct. Not by ourselves. Again, any change would have to be a negotiated change, subject to court approval. And it's been a back and forth battle. I can't predict what fair share. We have pushed it to the limit, but what the next, again, the ultimate risk is that we go 2 years without any protections.
In 2 years, this all has to be redone.
Yes. There's been,
Whatever we decide to do,
correct. Yes, there's going to be. We spent, yes.
So for those 2 years, you're stating if we don't approve this, we have 2 years of no protection, that anybody can pretty much just come and do anything.
Yeah,
They
that's-
could do that yesterday, anyhow.
Well, I misspoke when I said, let me take it, because, meaning if we hadn't engaged in this litigation, if back in 2015, the Township Committee hadn't filed this action or hadn't filed on behalf of the township, that we would have been exposed that whole time. We've gotten every 6 months an extension of temporary, we have 8 years of temporary protections. So I don't know that short of a specific alternative presented to the court that will get much more time, and that's the consideration of the governing body, is to weigh that risk versus the not having the protections.
If we were to pass this, how long would it take before it was, before someone could even apply for the project? Could they even do it in 2 years?
Well, they could make application, whether they get through the planning process, that would be site-specific.
They'd have to deal with septic.
Yeah, they'd have to have those solutions in hand.
They'd have to buy a property. They'd have to buy a property first.
Right.
What would be the cost if we do not approve this? Like, are we going to then be responsible for legal fees for people that are suing us, or like, what?
I mean, the cost really, we've litigated for this for 8 years. I think I'm the 5th law firm on this. And there's been significant cost to the special master and the planner. But I mean, the risk is the uncontrolled project, the development that comes in.
So basically, if you approve this, you then get more protections than what you have just standing without the approval.
Yeah, well, we're at that juncture now where we're either going to approve this or we're going to lose our temporary protections. It's one or the other. I don't know that anything's going to happen between now and September. I think that's unlikely, but beyond that, I don't think we're getting an extension of time to renegotiate the matter. So.
The reason why I asked for September is because, like Mr. Dole said, the map can't be changed without litigation with the other side. They have to agree to any changes that we suggest, which is going to take us years. It took us 8 years to get where we are now. So even if we had a public hearing and got some input, you're talking years before we could change anything on that map through litigation, court, approved by the judge.
Yeah, No, and that's how it's going to go. It's Fair Share Housing has 600 plus municipalities they litigate in. It was a lot of effort to educate them, and quite frankly, they were through 3 lawyers as to the uniqueness of our town. They hear all the time, well, there's no access to water and sewer. They hear that all the time, and they become jaded to it. I'm like, no, you don't understand. There is none. It's not an allotment problem. It's a true fact. But no, I don't anticipate that they're going to be a willing partner in a negotiation at this. I don't anticipate that. I mean, just through our dealings, but that's.
Who funds this fair housing act? Who funds it? Us?
We do.
I mean, at the end of the day, what part of the additional actions we're taking is that there's a development fee imposed. Every round has a development fee on residential and commercial development. And when people get approvals, that's part of their approval. That includes that calculation. The county assessor gives us an estimate up front, and they pay a portion of it. Then when it's completed and there's an actual, they square up. But that's 20% of that collected can be used for administrative costs, which obviously our professional cost over 8 years has been significant. But at the end of the day, again, one of the other ways is if there is no protections, and I'm sure you've dealt with them, where you get projects that like they're inclusionary, so they say, we'll build 40 homes and 20% of them will be affordable, and they use the profit off of the 40 market homes or the 100 market homes or this, up and up to finance it. So at the end of the day, the project finances itself, but it finances itself through growth and additional population and the things that brings.
We only asked for 30 days.
Right.
All right, so I don't know how my counterparts feel, but I'll make the motion to table and we'll just see how it goes.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mrs. Slayton?
Yes.
Mr. Key?
Yeah.
Mr. Marsh?
Yes.
Mayor Burnett?
I also would like to set up and see if we can collectively come up with a date and time very quickly to have that meeting so people can come out and we can answer any questions, maps, whatever it takes, and your availability, so that way we can square this up. So that way we don't have any further questions and obviously we would never limit your questions on that September 12th meeting. But I would like to.
On that question, I think we need to. I don't know that we can do it in one step, only because we sent out hundreds of letters based on identifiable properties. I don't know what we're considering, so I don't know what the universe would be. At this point. No, I'm just saying maybe other people that would alternatively be affected. And I think I need to get, well, I'll just say I need to converse with the court, because we may not have that option. So we may be faced with a quote easier or more defined decision.
Okay. And if nothing else, I understand that the properties may not be up for negotiations due to the pending lawsuit, but maybe take that extra step to just have an informative section to help people better understand, like, the decision that we are faced with as to, like, we want to do everything, and I say we kind of liberally, but, if you don't agree, please jump in. We want to do everything we can to protect our town and how it is, the rural aspects of it. But as you can see, we are faced with a very tough decision on a lawsuit that has gone, and it's going to come up again, and it's going to continue to come up as long as you live here. As Matt Lyons just said, it's every 10 years that then this comes back to life. So when people are asking, like, you know, what does it do to our property value, that is our concern for you as well. When it's asked, like, what happens if we sell? Well, please watch what you're selling if you want to maintain the integrity of this town and your neighbors. You know, like, I know money talks, and if you're offered an obscene amount of money, you know, how much love and faith do you have in your neighbors? But it's collectively as a whole that we need to stick together to keep Franklin Township pure. And we are doing everything we can up here, but we need your help out there. Thank you.
Outline description. Most people don't understand it. So what I asked Matt to do was put together an outline of basically how this process works, because it is confusing. It's a state mandate. It's confusing to everybody up here when we first read it. So you understand why this is happening.
All right, I'll do that tomorrow.
Something we post on the website.
I'll have it.
Because it's going to answer a lot of the questions that.
All right, I'll have it completed tomorrow. Mayor, I say that at this point, the matters are all connected. So I would say that 14, 15, and 16, as well as some of the resolutions would yeah, and you can, I don't see any reason why you can't move 14, 15, and 16 to the table as a group, because take one, you take all. I think just for the record is to move the table those also.
Can we get a motion for that,
Correct, Mayor.
Need a motion to table ordinance 014, 23, 015, 23, and 016.
I make a motion to table 14 and 15 and 16.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mrs. Flame?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Marsh?
Yes.
Mayor, before we move on, I would also include Resos 167 to 170, 171.
We'll do that when we get there.
Okay.
Thank you.
I went through
The meeting is still going on. Please step outside if you're going to talk.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Making a motion to close the first public portion.
Make a motion to close the first public portion.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
All right. Motion to approve correspondence and reports.
Make a motion to approve the correspondence and reports.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to approve the minutes from July 11th, 2023.
Make a motion to approve the minutes from July 11th, 2023.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to approve the bill list.
Make a motion to approve the bill list.
Second.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mrs. Flame?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Marsh?
Yes.
Mayor Bruno?
Yes. Need a motion to approve raffle license.
Make a motion to approve the raffle license.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Need a motion to approve the solicitation lease.
Make a motion to approve the
License.
solicitation license.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Resolution, can I get a motion to table resolution R-167, R-168, R-169, R-170, and R-178?
Make a motion to table R-167, R-168, R-169, R-170, and R-171, 23.
Second.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mrs. Flame?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Marks?
Yes.
Mayor Bruno?
Yes. Can I get a motion to approve resolution 172-23, providing for the accommodation of certain issues and determining the form and other details of the offering of $4,809,000 general obligation bond series 2023 of the Township of Franklin and the County of Gloucester, State of New Jersey, and providing for the sale of such bonds.
Make a motion for R-172, 23.
Second.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mrs. Flame?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Marks?
Yes.
Mayor Bruno?
Can I get a motion for resolution 173-23, authorizing state contract use for purchase for the year 2023?
Make a motion for R-173, 23.
Second.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mrs. Flame?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Marks?
Yes.
Mayor Bruno?
Yes. Can I get a motion for resolution 174-23, appointing a risk management consultant, Gloucester, Salem, Cumberland County, Joint Municipal Transit?
Make a motion for R-174, 23.
Second.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mrs. Flame?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Marks?
Yes.
Mayor Bruno?
Yes. Can I get a motion for resolution 175-23, authorizing the tax collector to grant tax exemption for the totally disabled veteran?
Make a motion for R-175, 23.
Second.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mrs. Flame?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Marks?
Yes.
Mayor Bruno?
Yes. A motion for resolution 176-23, authorizing the chief financial officer to refund local fees charged to parents.
Make a motion for R-176, 23.
Second.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mrs. Flame?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Marks?
Yes.
Mayor Bruno?
Yes. A motion for resolution 177-23, authorizing the tax collector and chief financial officer to refund taxes paid in error.
Make a motion for R-177, 23.
Second.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mrs. Flame?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Marks?
Yes.
Mayor Bruno?
A motion for resolution 178-23, authorizing the issuance of duplicate sales tax certificates pursuant to NJSA 545-52.1.
Make a motion for R-178, 23.
Second.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mrs. Flame?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Marsh?
Yes.
Mayor Bruno?
Yes. Make a motion for resolution 179-23, approving the purchase of the development easement on the farm property of Catherine LaRose and Martin LaRose, known as Block 5802, Lot 1.
Make a motion for R-179, 23.
Second.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mrs. Flame?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Marsh?
Yes.
Mayor Bruno?
Yes. Resolution 180.
Excuse me, I really apologize. I know this is very out of order. We're not having a public portion on this resolution?
We
did.
No, well, it says, we went over this, and then it says after that, motion to open public portion for resolutions. and
We did.
Everybody was talking in the audience.
I didn't hear, but
We did, we waited too.
I apologize, I didn't hear. I just have some pertinent information with the land sales, but.
You can say it at the end, maybe?
I'm sorry?
You can say it at the end for any.
Well, it's before you guys vote on it, but basically one of the buyers is a junkyard.
It's one way or the other, I don't care which, but.
I apologize, I didn't hear what all the
Speaking or it's not
You
speaking.
open it or?
Either you open and he comes up, I can't tell what he's saying, so it's one way or the other.
I mean, it's just information you might want to know, you might not. It's up to you.
Just open it up for them.
Public comment?
Make a motion to open the public comment.
Anybody got a second? Second. All those in favor?
Aye. I do apologize again. I really didn't hear because of all the talking with the public portion. I do apologize, but I thank you for and I appreciate you tabling the motion as well. Christopher Sayers, 184 Malaga Lake Boulevard. And I just want you to know this for yourselves, the land sales, I looked into some of the buyers of the land sales, And one of the largest parcels is, oh, I don't have it offhand. It's the one off of Delsey Drive. Shea Avenue. The purchaser of that property was called Franklin Project LLC, and I got their state incorporation papers. I think they were incorporated in May 24th. And basically, the business purpose that they stated is to develop property or properties for sale, lease to auto salvage yards. So I know a lot of people are on record against having more junkyards in Franklin Township, and I just thought you might want to know this before you decide to finalize the sale. Whether or not you're for it in the end, that's up to you. I know it's they sold it for $300,000, but from what I understand, you can still deny the sale after this. So I just wanted to let you know that, and I appreciate it. Thank you for your time. I just wanted to let you know.
Make a motion to close public portion?
All those in favor?
Aye.
I have a question, Matt, for you. It's a public sale, right?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't condition any of the properties for any particular use or whatnot. We set a minimum
There's
bid.
no, the zoning's not right, he's gotta go through the process.
Yeah, we made no condition, we didn't grant any waivers or anything like that. And we took no action to perfect the property for anything.
And at the beginning of the auction, I made a statement to that fact, telling people that they've been posted for 30 days, they had to do their due diligence, they were being sold as is. There is no attachment of changing variances, they all have to go through the process if they buy it.
Thank you.
Okay, make a motion for resolution 18023, approving and authorizing the sale of township-owned properties.
Make a motion for R18023?
Second.
Mr. Doyle?
I'm gonna abstain.
Mrs. Flynn?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Marsh?
Yes.
Mayor Burton?
Yes. Make a motion for resolution 18123, authorizing the township of Franklin administrator to enter into a memorandum of agreement with the New Jersey State Policemen's Benevolent Association, Local 122, Franklin Township Superior Officers.
Make a motion for R18223?
Second.
Oh, 181, I'm sorry.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mrs. Flynn?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Absolutely.
Mr. Marsh?
Yes.
Mayor Burton?
Absolutely.
I was jumping ahead. Get ahead of us.
Make a motion for a resolution R18223, authorizing township committee to enter an agreement to provide 2 school resource officers for the Franklin Township School District for 2023 and 2024 school year.
Make a motion for R18223?
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mrs. Flynn?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Marsh?
Yes.
Mayor Burton?
Yes, I have a question, Matt.
Yes, sir.
Didn't they have 3 before?
No, sir. We had 3 too. We had 2 at Delsey, 1 at Franklin.
then you got the second
Last year
one?
Franklin asked to add a second one.
That guy, which bounced back and forth, right?
Correct.
Had a guy-
The two at Franklin still circled the 3 schools, but Franklin had wanted to go with the same as Delsey. Yep, 2 and 2. We did also have an inquiry from Edgerton and Ola, but they never followed through with them getting one for themselves also.
Thank you. A motion for resolution 18323, authorizing council committee of Township of Franklin to enter an agreement to provide 2 school resource officers for the Delsey Regional School District for the 2023-2024 school year.
Make a motion for R18323?
Second.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mrs. Flynn?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Marsh?
Yes.
Mayor Burton?
Yes. A motion for resolution 18423, appointing KML Caddy.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Part-time school crossing guard due to resignation of Karen Finelli.
Make a motion for R18423?
Second.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mrs. Flynn?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Marsh?
Yes.
Mayor Burton?
Yes. This is just for, you know, right?
Yes, sir.
Resolution, take a vote for resolution 18523, requesting the Director of the Division of Local Government Service to authorize the insertion of a special line item of revenue in the 2023 budget of the Township of Franklin, County of Gloucester, State of New Jersey, Clean Communities Bank.
Make a motion for R18523?
Second.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mrs. Flynn?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Marsh?
Yes.
Mayor Burton?
Yes. A a motion for resolution 18623 requesting the director of the Division of Local Government Services to authorize the insertion of a special line of revenue in the 2023 budget of the Township of Franklin, County of Gloucester, State of New Jersey, quicker ticket grant.
Make a motion for R 18623.
Mr. Doyle? Yes. Mrs. Blaine?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Marsh?
Yes.
Mayor Burton?
Yes. Bills. Need a motion for resolution 18723 requesting the director of the Division of Local Government Services to authorize the insertion of a special line item of revenue in the 2023 budget of the Township of Franklin, County of Gloucester, State of New Jersey, distracted driving.
Make a motion for R 18723.
Mr. Doyle? Yes. Mrs. Blaine?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Marsh?
Yes.
Mayor Burton?
Yes. Need a motion for resolution 18823 requesting the director of the Division of Local Government Services to authorize the insertion of a special line item of revenue in the 2022 budget of the Township of Franklin, County of Gloucester, State of New Jersey, Municipal Alliance Youth Leadership.
Make a motion for R 18823.
Mr. Doyle? Yes. Mrs. Blaine?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Marsh?
Yes.
Mayor Burton?
Yes. Resolution 18923 requesting the director of the Division of Local Government Services to authorize the insertion of a special line item of revenue in the 2023 budget of the Township of Franklin, County of Gloucester, State of New Jersey, Municipal Alliance.
$7,000.
Make a motion.
$7,000.
Make a motion for R 18923.
Mr. Doyle? Yes. Mrs. Blaine?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Marsh?
Yes.
Mayor Burton?
Yes. Resolution 19022 requesting the director of the Division of Local Government Services to authorize the insertion of a special item of revenue in the 2023 budget of the Township of Franklin, County of Gloucester, State of New Jersey, lead grant assistance program.
Make a motion for R 19023.
Mr. Doyle? Yes. Mrs. Blaine?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Marsh?
Yes.
Mayor Burton?
Yes. Need a motion for resolution 19123 requesting the director of the Division of Local Government Services to authorize the insertion of a special item of revenue in the 2023 budget of the Township of Franklin, County of Gloucester, State of New Jersey, opioid settlement.
Make a motion for R 19123.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mrs. Blaine?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Marsh?
Yes.
Mayor Burton?
Yes. Need a motion for resolution 19223 requesting the director of the Division of Local Government Services to authorize the insertion of a special line item of revenue in the 2023 budget of the Township of Franklin, County of Gloucester, State of New Jersey, stormwater assistance grant.
Make a motion for R 19223.
Mr. Doyle? Yes. Mrs. Blaine?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Marsh?
Yes.
Mayor Burton?
Yes. Need a motion for resolution 19323 authorizing the award of a contract from Arawak Paving for fiscal year New Jersey DOT 2022 Dutch Mill Road Phase 5 resurfacing project.
Make a motion for R 19323.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mrs. Blaine?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Marsh?
Yes.
Mayor Burton?
Mayor, 194 will have to be tabled to next meeting.
Okay.
I need to table that.
Yes.
Make a motion to table resolution 19423.
Make a motion to table R 19423.
Second.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mrs. Blaine?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Marsh?
Yes.
Mayor Burton?
Yes. Make a motion for resolution 19523, amending resolution R13023, authorizing tax collector to grant exemption for totally disabled veteran.
Make a motion for R 19523.
Second.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mrs. Blaine?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Marsh?
Yes.
Mayor Burton?
Yes. Need a motion for resolution 19623, authorizing canceling of tax sale certificate 23-00041 sold in error and refund the purchase funds in the amount of $78,220.
Make a motion for R 19623.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mrs. Blaine?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Marsh?
Yes.
Mayor Burton?
Yes. Need a motion for resolution 19723, approving consent order between Nancy Kennedy and the Township of Franklin.
Make a motion for R 19723.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mrs. Blaine?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Marsh?
Yes.
Mayor Burton?
Yes. Make a motion for resolution 19823, appointing Jennifer Metzger, full-time senior lunch program coordinator to supply daily senior lunch program.
Make a motion for R19823.
Second.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mrs. Quinn?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Marsh?
Yes.
Mayor Burton?
Yes. Need a motion to open the second public portion for any comments?
Make a motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Great. Lindsay will take it.
In light of the situations that have been going on with some of the board members not being able to make it to other meetings besides here, absentee problems, like the last zoning board meeting, all the applicants had to be postponed for another month. I started looking into other townships to see what they do in that situation, because we're running into a very similar situation that I can just give you four right off top right here. Harrison Township, Clayton, Buena Vista, and Woolwich all ran into the same issues between the last 2 to 5 years. Not having enough members and having to postpone things. What they ended up doing was coming up with a joint board, where the zoning and planning board became one. And what they found out, it was actually saving them about 4% a year in cost, because they could get to one solicitor instead of two, one engineer instead of two for those meetings, and they didn't have any issues at that point not being able to field enough people to be able to have the applications present and have them do things. Just something I've been looking into and wanted to see what everybody thought on this. There's what most of them are doing is they end up having 9 members and 4 volunteers. So there could be, being they're having those 2 different boards, some splitting between zoning decisions, some splitting between planning board decisions. So there's no conflicts. They also have 4 alternates that they could field in the event that there's a conflict. But it ends up saving the taxpayers money, and you don't have those absentee issues, and you don't have residents showing up that sit there for nothing and find out that night that it's canceled. Just something again to think about, because it's happening more often where we're having, and I understand people need off, you can't always make it. But it is something that would end up, I can't see a not having it, and we're going to have to continue to have the same issues. Having it, I can't find any negative unless there's somebody that can field an argument for me of why we shouldn't.
Did you want the same people sitting on the planning board as the zoning?
Well, you'd have to eliminate some of the members. Because we have too many between the two, you couldn't do that. You'd have to field it down. Now, I can talk about some issues with some members too, but I don't get into the slander side, but there's some ethical things that are going on at different boards that shouldn't be, and if you watch any meetings, you can see it. This shouldn't be happening. And there's ones that have been volunteers for years that shouldn't be, where they're tired, and you can tell it. They get stressed out very easy and snap at the residents pretty quick. But that's not what I'm asking that for. I'm doing it because, like I said, the last one there was 4 applications that had to postpone everything. I mean, they had lawyers, engineers, everything set up for it, and we had to cancel on them. It shouldn't happen.
Population's too large.
If you look at
It's too large. State of New Jersey only allows it for populations under 15,000.
because Harrison is almost identical to us. Now, they're just under 15, but they're real close. Woolwich is just under it by about 800. So, I mean, there's obviously next year they may be over it, but I didn't know if there was a legal reason. That's why I'm asking. I didn't. Okay. That's the main thing. I also we talked about the political signs, the billboards. And what you told me, I actually called the state legislative department on it, and I called the DOT because that's what I was told from the state side. And both of them told me the same thing, that the boards, any type of political sign falls on the jurisdiction of the township. That is overruled anything about any private. It doesn't matter. If it's oversized to start with, the township should have stepped in. The DOT at this point told me that it's a state highway that they're on. They shouldn't have been allowed to start with. They said there's actually laws against that through the DOT side because it's over the size of the township ordinance. That's what overrules all the laws on political signs. I know that's one.
I'm not fully involved in this conversation. These are approved billboards?
They weren't approved from what I gather, because there had to be a permit filed and it had to go through the state to be on an oversized billboard.
There's a temporary political sign situation which involves placing signs ordinarily along the right of way where towns have regulated them. I thought, Myers, you're talking about a leased billboard.
Right, correct.
That's not a temporary political sign.
I understand that, but it's also over our township ordinance, which says that it gets overruled on any type of political sign.
I don't think that's accurate. I think
Billboard has an ID number.
I understand that.
I think you're
and they all
mixing
do.
two different things.
Well, that's why I contacted someone.
Both, but not when you put them together.
Well, according to the state legislative department, it falls under the township ordinance. If it's political, Anything else falls under a total different jurisdiction for the
Regulate
permit.
Content of a billboard,
Well, you actually can, there's court cases on it.
not based on political speech.
You can, depending on what the speech is, and political has a total different jurisdiction.
I think I'll have to look into it.
Please.
I'll follow up with who you talk to, but I think you're combining two things and coming up with a result that you have to look at the approved billboard and how that's regulated. If the state says billboards on the state right of way can't have political content.
No, they have to have a permit done through the state for that because it's on a state highway. Now,
billboards
for
every content.
if it's political in nature. Anybody else goes through the normal permitted billboard.
If you can leave that with Matt or I'll certainly follow up.
So then they had asked me to contact the DOT because it's on a state highway, which I did. The state said that they can come down and investigate it.
Investigate an established billboard.
Correct, if it's political in nature. And they said, but unfortunately, in order to do that, I've got to sign the complaint, and it would cost the taxpayers money. I said, I don't want to do that. I said, I'm going to plead to the good nature of the gentleman that did it and understand that he put it up knowing that at that point in time, it would not be able to fall into the 10-day removal process. And let me finish.
I just think you're talking about a temporary political sign ordinance as opposed to the content of an approved billboard.
Well, I'm going to appeal to Mr. Doyle's deeds and see that if we're going to go this route. And then because the sign is being left up, knowing how the township ordinance is on political signs, then at that point, I just appeal to you as a decent person to have them taken down. How'd you get them up?
I paid them.
Well, then you could pay to have them down.
Campaign to get into the election. We're not paying for that.
Well, I understand it, but it's being left up past the 10-day grace period we're allowed.
I think you're I think you're mixing two different things, but I'll look into it. But I think they're giving you an answer relative to temporary political signs.
You can send me who you talk to. I'll give you a call.
Well, it's you call a state, and they as soon as you call them, it's surprising how many people jump on board that want to help you. It's not. This isn't anything fancy. I'm just a basic resident calling.
It is, but you know.
Martin Luther King had a statement that said, the ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy. Again, right is right, and that's what should be done.
Good evening. Leah Vasallo, 560 Delsey Drive in Malaga. Mr. Doyle, earlier on one of the resolutions, you abstained from the vote. Do you remember which resolution that was? And why did you abstain?
Because I wasn't here, I wasn't present, and
For the land sale?
and I heard that someone I know had bought a parcel, so.
Who did you know who got a parcel?
I don't know if it was an LLC or a company. There was a guy named Brian McDowell who had on the property, so
Is he a cousin of yours?
not my cousin by blood.
Not by blood, but you have some familial relationship?
No family relationship, just a friend.
But you are related to some McDowells?
I'm related to a lot of people in town.
Name McDowell?
And I'm in blood relations with McDowell.
I'm just asking the question. Hey, listen, I'm just asking because there's a ordinance on, in Franklin Township saying that you have to verbalize why you're not voting or it's considered a yes vote. So when you say abstain and you say nothing else, you voted yes. If you were, what's that?
I just verbalized it.
You did now, but, well, I'll read it to you if you want.
I believe you. I just gave you the answer.
Well, what I'm saying is you actually, by not following the ordinance, technically voted yes. So that's why I'm asking the question. I'm trying to figure out what the conflict is, because it just seems like every time there's a land sale, someone affiliated with you ends up either purchasing a property.
You abstained from all of them, so you have nothing to complain about.
I don't know even what you're trying to say there, but I guess you're being witty. It just seems that every time the township decides to sell a tax sale certificate or property, someone that you know ends up purchasing it. That's all. All depends, Jake. It all depends.
Harry Kennedy, 1578. Matt, I have to believe your solicitor, Matt Lyons. Matt has expertise on billboards that is probably only exceeded by Tim's. from back in his days as mayor in Washington Township. He can tell you more billboard stories than I can at the Delaware River Port Authority. But what's interesting is I'd like to do a man bites dog story tonight, and I'd like to compliment you as a township committee. There are a lot of terrible disasters that happen. They come along every 5 years. We lose people suddenly. We lost police officers. We lost mayors. That tragedy that happened in Buna, and in terms of all the resultant publicity that it got, Mr. Mayor, it was something that was extremely commendable by the Franklin Township Police Department. Not only the way they handled it, which was exemplary, but the way they showed a touch of humanity in the way they handled it, the way they talked to the victims and explained that, the way they handled themselves on not only local media but national media. The police department's to be commended, and the public relations nature of the police department is to be commended, because as we all know, we can go to surrounding communities and we can see sex lies and videotapes and scandals all over the place, and chiefs of police being accused of being involved with patrolmen's wives, and court cases going on, up and down the road. It's terrible. But here in Franklin Township, everything seems to be going copacetic, and I wanted to commend the Franklin Township Committee on that way that was handled, and especially the police department and the chief. It could not have been done in a better fashion or a more exemplary fashion. And makes me truly proud. Yeah, there were. And again, I know you have dealt with more tragedies and more gigantic problems, from hurricanes to sweltering heat, and you've seen the suffering that people have gone through, Jake, and up and down the line. But again, as bad as that was, the police department did a great job, and I hope you'll convey that to them. As a final note tonight, I think it's very important what you did tonight. You showed an ability to listen to the people that were in the audience and to make a tough decision, to do the overlays, to have the discussion, to explain what the boundaries are in terms of the overlays. But your solicitor, in his excellence in explaining something, you sort of get yourself in a little bit of trouble. You hoist yourself on your own petard. You can't say that we have the best township committee and they're the best people to understand what the overlay should be, and then the people up here can say, well, we didn't have anything to do with it. It was Dave and Jake that negotiated it. Well, Dave's no longer with us. Dave is now the chairman of the local Republican Party and doing an excellent job, soliciting funds, bringing them in, dealing with engineers, does an excellent job, one of a kind. But those were the two people that dealt with the overlay. You guys ought to take a good look at it, because remember, and Jonathan, I don't recall that you were at that meeting yet when they had that meeting of the EDC. At some point, I will be happy to play back that tape for you. I just enjoy listening to that tape so much as we come in and out of trailers, and we talk about sewage, and we talk about water, and we talk about Oak Avenue. It's just a fun tape. But one of the important things that was discussed on that was water and sewer, and where it could be gotten, and how we needed friends in the state and the county to get it. And again, the low-cost housing and the overlay. And some of you are old enough to remember what happened with Shockett and what happened with the last time we went through this. And I know Mike was here, and many of you were at least involved in a tertiary way with all the things that happened. It's a very, very scary process. And your solicitor's right. You don't want a builder's remedy. But the nice thing about Franklin Township is, without water and sewer, we're the only place in Gloucester County that has a net decrease in population. It ain't exactly the most popular place in the world for people to come at the present time. That's not because of anything that you've done. It's because of the fact that there isn't water and sewer, and there isn't the ability to do it. I see there's 7 seconds left, and since I'm not James Bond, I'll stop right at that point. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Township Committee and Police.
Chris Sayers, 184 Malaga Lake Boulevard. Man, it's always hard to follow Harry, regardless. I want to thank you again for your indulgence about the land sale coming up. I just thought you guys would want to know that before you voted on it, so I appreciate that. And I wanted to thank you for tabling the resolution for the low-income housing. I know it's a hard, again, like I said, I did my research and I wanted to try my hardest to find a loophole where you guys didn't do your job. But again, our settlement pretty much matched all the neighboring settlements of the towns around us. And, I hope that you guys are working to keep our town rolling. I appreciate that. But again, I have to go to the overlay zone that we're going to talk about. And don't we already have sewer in Franklin Township by Meredith Farms? Why wasn't that included? Yeah, so why wasn't that included? If like sewer was taken into account and the ready accessibility of sewer. What? Yeah. Yeah. But I'm saying
it was excluded from availability to affordable housing. We made the argument that it predated this litigation and there shouldn't be
Part of that
punishment
allocation was designated for housing.
And that right, and then that settlement or that litigation terminated.
Yeah.
That prior litigation.
So again, hopefully we can have a public meeting.
Yeah. That's the real limitation there, is the inability to have even have well.
Yeah. No potable water from Buda.
Yeah, you can't get well. You can't even drill there.
Yeah. Because of the contamination. Yeah. And I wouldn't drink what came out of the ground there anyway. But anyway, I just do appreciate. Thank you for listening to the residents. And again, it's just, I think people just wanted their opinions known about it. They wanted their input, as opposed to just getting this document, this map, and having their houses or their properties on it, like as a surprise. So, but I appreciate that. And I'm sorry, real quick. Before, when I talked about low-income housing, there was a lawsuit that I think up to 16 municipalities had filed against Governor Murphy to try and reenact COA. And I had suggested that maybe someone could look into that to see if that's something, so that so basically our planning is not based on litigation, but an actual board of appointed officials who are a little easier to work with than an adversarial body like the Fair Share Housing Center. Has anybody looked into that?
If that litigation is successful, I monitor the docket. If it's successful, it'll benefit all the municipalities. We haven't chosen to fund that litigation.
Okay.
There are very wealthy towns, as I'm sure
you know,
that have plenty of
excess funds to fight
plenty
that.
of budget ability to fight that.
Yeah.
And again, the basis of that is not to get rid of the obligation.
It's just to instill the COA board. Yeah.
By a board, which will be an appointed board of the governor, though.
Yeah.
So, but again, we'll monitor the litigation. If that changes, it'll have an impact on the third round.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Motion to close the second public portion.
Motion to close.
All in favor?
Aye.
Committee reports. Mr. Jones.
All right, so just first and foremost, thoughts and prayers to the victims and first responders to the FEMA situation. And then we had EDC met last week, and they discussed some questions about the logistics of operations, and had some questions about Meredith Farms on that there. The Environmental Commission met, and I was unable to attend, so I was out of state due to business, but we are continuing talking about a secretary for Environmental Commission. I know that the administrator is looking internally for that. And then Mr. Stipic requested that they be involved in the bid packet process, and I think that we should maybe review the plans for the grant that we have just before we go to bid. And then Communications Commission will meet tomorrow Matt, where are we at with the bid process for? Yeah. But the bid process for the microphones and cameras and everything?
We haven't, just with the capital ordinance going through tonight, we have to wait 20 days and then we can award it to one of the people. I already have to bid to go out to people.
Okay, great. So that's going to be a step in improving our communication process there. But if you want to be involved in the website redevelopment, it is tomorrow. We're still going strong on that. So thank you. You're welcome.
Community Day coming up shortly. It's coming up quick. I hope everyone can attend, and I want to congratulate and thank Chief Zimmer. Chief Zimmer retired August 1st. We were hired on the same day together. He was 31, I was 32. I just want to congratulate him and wish him the best of luck in his future endeavors.
I will second what Community Marsh just said with Chief Zimmer. It was a pleasure having him as chief for all those years, and we commend his services. I want to thank, as well as everybody else, the Township Police Department for all the initiatives that they've put forth lately, especially with the latest tragedies that we've seen, and it is commendable as well. That's it.
The comment on this, everybody steals the good stuff. So, they forgot a lot of stuff after the time. I just wanted to thank the police. They constantly step up. There's never get complaints. Those guys really care. And it shows up talking about bombs and crashes and fatalities. It's just an amazing group of guys that keeps us safe. National Night Out looked like a huge success. Mike had a microphone. How could you forget you were there on the microphone? Mike had they did a canine demonstration. It was really a nice night. A lot of people. Heather was there. And you were away. John was away. More ice cream. Free ice cream too. Free lemonade. No, free hot dog. But they did a great job. Steve Castellino, he put it together. Matt and all. They had a little retirement party for Brian that I got to attend. It was good to see him. He looks happy. He looks retired. And the tragedy in the funeral, that was horrible. Those guys have been through so much. Remember a few years back on the boulevard there, the family, the car accident, they were out there that too. And these guys have seen a lot of bad things. Hard things. Young kids, it's tough. But I want to commend those guys. They come to work every day, don't ever complain, they do their job, and we're appreciative of that. With that said, can I get a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn?
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Want to do this?